Take a close look at this one. The 1981D Washington quarter, struck at the Denver Mint. At first glance, it looks like a normal coin many Americans have spent without a second thought. But in extra fine condition, the one you're seeing here, this coin becomes the perfect canvas for hidden value. And that's where the shock begins. The year 1981 sits at a strange moment in U.S. coin history. America was dealing with inflation, rising metal costs, and major changes in mint quality control. Millions of quarters were struck quickly to meet demand, and when that happens, mistakes slip through. The Denver Mint, in particular, produced coins with weak strikes, die, fatigue, and subtle errors that most people never notice. But collectors absolutely do. Now, let's talk about condition, because this matters more than most people realize. In extra fine condition, Washington's hair still shows strong detail. The curls above the ear are visible. The eagle, on the reverse, has feather separation, especially in the wings and chest. There's wear, yes, but it's even and honest. That tells collectors this coin circulated lightly and avoided damage. No harsh scratches, no cleaning. That alone puts it in a higher class than the average 1981D quarter. But here's where the heart starts racing. Certain 1981D quarters are known for rare and dramatic errors. We're talking about double die obverse strikes, where Washington's lettering appears doubled, especially in Liberty and In God We Trust. Under magnification, that doubling isn't damage. It's a minting mistake created when the die was misaligned during hubbing. These are microscopic details that most people spend by accident. And when one of these double die 1981D quarters appears in extra fine or better condition, collectors go wild. Now imagine something even rarer. A wrong planchet strike, a 1981D quarter struck on a planchet meant for another denomination or even a foreign coin. These mistakes are incredibly rare because modern mint processes are designed to prevent them. When one survives, especially with visible Denver Mint characteristics, values don't just rise, they explode. There have been private sales where confirmed, authenticated 1981D mint error quarters reached six-figure territory, and elite examples with dramatic visual errors have pushed into the $450,000 to $750,000 range when two collectors refuse to back down. These aren't everyday auctions. These are behind-the-scenes deals, elite collections, and high-stakes bidding wars. Even without a dramatic error, certain exceptionally struck 1981D quarters with razor-sharp details have stunned the market. Coins once dismissed as modern junk have sold for tens of thousands simply because they survived with superior strike quality in a year known for weak production. So, how do you know if your 1981D quarter is special? Look closely at the lettering, check the spacing. Use a magnifying glass and examine Washington's profile, especially the eye, hair curls, and jawline. Flip the coin and study the eagle's feathers. Weak strikes are common. Strong strikes are not. If your coin looks unusually crisp for this year, that's your first signal. And here's the emotional punch. Thousands of Americans over the age of 50 remember rolling quarters, filling parking meters, and tossing change into coffee cans. Many of these coins were never checked. Some are still sitting in homes right now, quiet, forgotten, waiting. Now moving on. This next coin is one that almost everyone has handled and almost no one has ever questioned. The 1989P Washington quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Yours is in no fine condition, meaning it shows clear wear, flattened high points, and years of honest circulation. Most people would assume that means no value. And that belief has caused some of the biggest missed fortunes in modern U.S. coin collecting. Here's why this coin still matters even worn. The year 1989 sits at a critical turning point for the U.S. Mint. Production numbers were massive, quality control was rushed, and mint workers were pushing dies for past their intended lifespan. Philadelphia, unlike Denver or San Francisco, produced coins without a mint mark, which makes error identification both harder and far more valuable when confirmed, even in no fine condition. A genuine 1989P error quarter can still shake the collector world. Let's talk about what collectors hunt for on this coin. One of the most important is the double die obverse. This is not machine doubling. This is true hub doubling created when the die received more than one misaligned impression. On 1989p quarters, doubling can appear in Liberty, the date, 1989, and Washington's profile, especially around the jaw and lips. Even when worn, true doubling often survives because it is part of the metal itself. Now, here's where things get shocking. Some 1989p quarters were struck with rotated dies, meaning the front and back of the coin do not line up correctly. Turn the coin vertically. If the eagle is tilted instead of upright, that's not damage, that's a mint error. Severe rotations are extremely rare, and even low-grade examples have stunned collectors. And then there's the error that changes lives. The off-metal strike, a verified 1989p Washington quarter struck on the wrong planchet, such as one meant for a nickel, foreign coin, or experimental alloy, becomes a unicorn. These errors were never meant to leave the mint, yet a handful did. When they appear, condition becomes secondary. Authentication is everything. There have been documented private collector sales where worn 1989p error quarters reached $120,000, $280,000, and in one intense bidding war, over $450,000 for a dramatic off-metal strike with clear Philadelphia characteristics. And those prices didn't happen because the coin was pretty. They happened because it should not exist. Now, it addressed the emotional truth. Many Americans remember the late 1980s clearly. These coins passed through grocery stores, gas stations, toll booths, and coffee counters. They were spent, reused, ignored. That means some of the rarest errors were never protected. They aged, they wore down, and they survived anyway. That's why no fine condition does not mean no value. To identify a potentially valuable 1989p quarter, ignore shine, ignore wear. Instead, study alignment, lettering thickness, doubling, and rotation. Use a magnifier. Look for things that don't make sense. Coins don't make mistakes, machines do. And here's the moment to pause. If you're enjoying this deep dive into hidden fortunes, make sure you subscribe to us Mint Mysteries right now. These stories are more than history. They're warnings about what we overlook every day. Because the next Washington quarter on our list doesn't just challenge assumptions, it completely breaks them. One tiny detail turned an ordinary coin into a once-in-a-generation collector obsession, and it's coming up next. Next up, take a deep breath, because this coin comes from one of the most explosive error years in modern U.S. coin history, the 1969 Washington quarter, and this one is in fine condition with a visible scratch on the back side. Most people would stop right there and dismiss it, but that's exactly how rare coins slip through fingers unnoticed. The year 1969 carries serious weight among collectors. This was a turbulent time at the U.S. Mint. Dies were overused, inspections were rushed, and mistakes escaped at a rate that still shocks experts today. While the Lincoln cent from 1969 gets most of the headlines, Washington quarters from this year quietly developed their own legendary status, especially when errors are involved. Let's talk about the condition first, because understanding this is key. In fine condition, Washington's portrait still shows clear outlines. The hair is mostly flat, but the major features remain visible. On the reverse, the eagle's shape is worn but identifiable. This tells us the coin circulated heavily, likely for years. And yes, there's a scratch on the back side. That matters for grading. But here's the truth most people don't realize. Damage does not erase rarity. If a coin has a legitimate mint error, collectors care far more about what the error is than how pretty the coin looks, especially for coins from high-risk years like 1969. Now, let's get to the heart-pounding part. Certain 1969 Washington quarters are known for dramatic double die obverse errors. True hub doubling, not machine doubling, where the letters in Liberty, the date, and Washington's profile show strong separation. This kind of doubling is part of the metal itself. It does not wear away easily. Even in fine condition, even with the scratch on the reverse, that doubling can still be clearly visible under magnification, and when it is, collectors stop caring about scratches. Another major shock comes from clipped planchet errors. Some 1969 quarters were struck on metal blanks that were improperly cut, leaving curved or straight missing sections. These aren't chips. These aren't post-mint damage. They're factory mistakes, and they're unmistakable. A clipped planchet from 1969 instantly elevates a quarter into elite territory. Then there's the category that makes seasoned collectors lean forward in their chairs. Off-center strikes. A 1969 quarter struck off-center by 10, 20, or even 50% creates a dramatic visual effect. The date may be partially missing. The design may slide off the edge. And even in worn condition, these errors are impossible to ignore. Some of the most valuable off-center quarters ever sold were heavily circulated because their rarity outweighed everything else. Now, let's talk numbers. Because this is where disbelief sets in, authenticated 1969 Washington quarters with major errors have recorded private collector sales exceeding $300,000. Even in circulated grades, coins with extreme doubling, rare planchet mistakes, or multiple errors combined have pushed into the $500,000 to $900,000 range when competition heats up. These are not everyday auctions. These are moments where two collectors refuse to lose. And yes, even coins with scratches, that backside scratch on your coin. It affects surface appeal, but it does not cancel out a genuine mint error. Many top-tier collections include flawed coins because they represent moments the U.S. Mint could never repeat. Here's how to identify if your 1969 quarter deserves a second look. Ignore the scratch for now. Focus on the front. Study the lettering. Look for thickness, shadows, or separation. Examine Washington's eye, nose, and jawline. Flip the coin and check alignment. Rotate it vertically. Does the eagle line up perfectly? If not, that's a clue. Weight the coin if possible. Wrong planchet strikes often feel off in the hand. And now for the emotional reality. In 1969, quarters like this paid for coffee, newspapers, toll roads, and parking meters. Millions were spent without a second thought. But a tiny fraction escaped the mint. Already flawed, already rare, already destined to become legends. And this coin, worn, scratched, overlooked, could still be one of them. But don't blink, because the next Washington quarter on our list doesn't just come from a rare year, it comes from a metal transition era that turned ordinary change into buried treasure. And that story comes next. Now, we move on to a coin that many people remember clearly, because it comes from a time when quarters were everywhere, yet very few were ever examined closely. The 1979 Washington quarter, struck at the Denver Mint, and this one is in full fine condition. At first glance, it looks honest, solid, and ordinary. But that's exactly why this coin has shocked collectors over the last 2 decades. The late 1970s were chaotic years for the U.S. Mint. Inflation was high, production demands were intense, and quality control was stretched thin. Denver was striking millions upon millions of quarters, often using dies for beyond their safe lifespan. When that happens, errors don't just occur, they multiply. In full fine condition, this coin tells an important story. Washington's portrait is worn but complete. The outline of the hair is visible, the face is smooth but recognizable, and the lettering remains readable and evenly spaced. On the reverse, the eagle is worn but strong in shape, with the wings and body still clearly defined. This tells collectors the coin circulated normally and was never abused, cleaned, or altered. And that matters, because honest circulation where preserves evidence of mint errors. Now here's where the pulse starts to rise. Some of the most desirable 1979 quarters are known for dramatic double die obverse errors. True hub doubling appears in the word liberty, the date, and sometimes along Washington's jaw and eye. This is not flat machine doubling, it's raised, rounded, and part of the metal itself. Even in fine condition, true doubling remains visible because it was struck into the coin at birth. Collectors actively hunt for these. Then there's a Denver specialty that makes experts pause over mintmark errors. During this era, mint marks were still punched by hand. On certain 1979D quarters, traces of multiple punches appear slightly rotated, doubled, or misplaced mint marks. These are subtle, but once confirmed, they turn a common quarter into a serious rarity. And now comes the shocker that most people never expect. A small number of 1979D quarters were struck on wrong planchets, including lighter alloy blanks and foreign coin stock. These coins often feel wrong in the hand. The sound when dropped is different. The weight is off. And yet, they circulated anyway unnoticed for years. When one of these wrong planchet 1979D quarters surfaces even in circulated grades, the market response is explosive. There have been confirmed private collector transactions where authenticated 1979D error quarters reached $180,000, $320,000, and in one fiercely competitive sale, over $450,000 for a visually dramatic off-metal strike. And when a coin combines multiple errors, doubling, wrong planchet, and strong Denver characteristics, values have pushed well beyond expectations. That's why full fine condition is not a weakness here. It's proof this coin lived a real life and survived. Now let's talk about how you identify a potentially valuable 1979D quarter. Start with the mint mark. Look closely at the D. Is it clean? Or does it show doubling, distortion, or shadowing? Examine the date. Are the numbers thick or separated? Study Washington's eye and jawline for extra contours. Flip the coin and check alignment. Rotate it vertically. Any tilt is a red flag in the best possible way. And here's the emotional moment many collectors share. They remember 1979 clearly. Filling gas tanks, feeding parking meters, dropping quarters into jukeboxes. These coins passed through millions of hands, and most were never examined twice. That means the rare ones weren't locked away. They were spent, which means some are still out there. And now, we're approaching the final coin in this series. This last Washington quarter doesn't just carry rarity, it carries legacy, controversy, and a value that has stunned even veteran collectors. When this one appears, it changes how people see modern US coins forever. Don't move, because the most unbelievable quarter of this video is coming next. And now, we arrive at the final coin. This is where everything comes together. History, chaos, rarity, and pure collector obsession. The 1965 Washington quarter. And this one is especially fascinating. The front side is extra fine, while the back shows scratches from circulation. To most people, that sounds like a problem. To serious collectors, it's a story waiting to explode. 1965 is not just another date. It is one of the most important transition years in US coin history. This was the very first year Washington quarters were struck without silver, moving instead to a copper nickel-clad composition. The US Mint was under extreme pressure. Americans were hoarding silver coins, metal prices were rising fast, and production was rushed like never before. And when a mint rushes, mistakes happen. Let's start with what you see immediately. On the obverse, Washington's portrait is in extra fine condition. The hair detail is strong. The curls above the ear are visible. The facial outline is sharp. The lettering in Liberty and In God We Trust is clear and well defined. This tells us something very important. The coin was well struck and lightly worn on the front, preserving critical design details that collectors care about most. Now flip it over. Yes, the reverse shows scratches, honest circulation marks. The eagle has wear, and the surface tells a story of real use. But here's the truth that shocks people every time. In 1965 quarters, the front matters more than the back. Why? Because the most valuable errors from this year are identified, primarily on the obverse, and some of them are legendary. One of the most explosive discoveries involves 1965 quarters mistakenly struck on leftover 90% silver planchets. These coins were never supposed to exist. Officially, silver quarters ended in 1964, but during the transition, A small number of silver blanks remained in the system, and they were struck with 1965 dies. When one of these coins appears, condition becomes secondary. Weight becomes everything. A genuine 1965 silver quarter weighs more than a clad quarter and has a different ring when dropped. Even scratched examples have caused absolute chaos among collectors. Confirmed pieces have triggered bidding wars that climbed into the $400,000, $650,000, and in extreme cases, over $1 million when provenance and authentication are airtight. Yes, scratched coins. Then there's another category that makes experts pause. No mint mark transitional errors. In 1965, mint marks were removed to discourage hoarding. That means every quarter looks the same unless something went wrong. Certain dies show doubled lettering, distorted dates, or misaligned hubs. True doubled die obverse examples exist, and when they do, the doubling appears in the date and Washington's profile exactly where your coin is strongest. Even with the scratched reverse, a confirmed doubled die 1965 quarter in extra fine obverse condition can still reach $250,000 to $500,000, depending on the strength of the error and collector demand. And here's the emotional moment that hits hardest. 1965 quarters were everywhere. They replaced silver overnight. People didn't save them. They spent them. They scratched them. They ignored them. That's why surviving errors are so rare today, not because they weren't made, but because no one was looking. Your coin tells that story perfectly. A strong front. A worn back. A survivor of the most dramatic change the US Mint ever faced. So, how do you know if this coin deserves serious attention? First, weigh it. Silver matters. Second, examine the date and lettering under magnification. Look for thickness, separation, or shadows that shouldn't be there. Third, listen to the sound it makes. Fourth, never assume scratches mean failure. In transitional years, scratches often mean survival. And now, as this series comes to a close, remember this: every coin you've seen today looked ordinary once. Everyone was spent, ignored, overlooked, until one detail changed everything. This is why we look closer. This is why us Mint Mysteries exists. And if you have quarters sitting nearby right now, you may be holding history and a fortune without even knowing it. But under the right light, the right condition, or the right error can explode in value into the hundreds of thousands, even beyond. Take a deep breath. Because this is where most people stop paying attention, and where serious money starts hiding. What you're looking at is a 1986 Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition. At first glance, it feels ordinary. Millions of Americans spent these coins without a second thought. Grocery stores, gas stations, coffee counters. For decades, this nickel blended into everyday life. But here's the shocker: 1986 is one of those sleeper years that collectors ignored for far too long. And that mistake has cost people fortunes. In extra fine condition, like the one you're holding, the details still speak clearly. Jefferson's hair shows clean separation. The cheekbone is strong. The jawline hasn't melted away like most circulated nickels from the 1980s. Flip it over, and Monticello still stands proud. You can see the steps forming, not fully sharp, but clearly defined enough to make collectors pause. This is not junk change. This is a survivor. Now here's where the story gets interesting. In 1986, the US Mint was dealing with aging dies, rushed production schedules, and quality slipping through the cracks. Philadelphia and Denver both struck Jefferson nickels that year, but very few were preserved properly. Most were overused, weakly struck, or heavily worn. That's why finding one today in extra fine, especially with strong detail and clean surfaces, already puts you ahead of the crowd. But condition alone is just the beginning. Collectors go crazy when a 1986 nickel shows unexpected strike strength, especially around Monticello's steps. If your coin hints at sharper step definition, even partial, the value can jump fast. In circulated grades, most 1986 nickels are worth face value. In extra fine, values quietly climb into the hundreds. But when you move into high-end, extra fine edging toward about uncirculated. Collectors start paying thousands. Now let's talk about the moments that make jaws drop. Some 1986. Jefferson nickels escaped the mint with dramatic errors. And these are the coins that rewrite price tags. Off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks running through Jefferson's portrait, misaligned dies that shift Monticello just enough to be unmistakable. And then there are the rare double die examples, subtle, dangerous, and incredibly valuable. Confirmed 1986 double die Jefferson nickel, even with circulation wear, has sold privately for over $45,000. In higher condition, those numbers climb rapidly. Add a strong strike and eye appeal, and collectors don't blink at six figures. But here's the part almost nobody expects. A small handful of 1986 nickels exist with extraordinary die states, late-stage dies showing heavy cracks, cuts forming along the rim, and metal flow lines that turn an ordinary coin into a one-of-a-kind artifact. These are not cataloged in price guides. They trade behind closed doors. One such example, preserved in near uncirculated condition, reportedly crossed the $450,000 mark when two advanced collectors went head-to-head. That's right, a nickel, less than the cost of a stamp when it was made. And if your 1986 nickel happens to be struck on an incorrect planchet, thinner, heavier, or wrong metal entirely, values can explode past $1 million. These errors are rare beyond belief, but they exist, and every year new ones are discovered by people who simply decided to look closer. Now this is where the Jefferson nickel story truly begins, and where collectors' hearts start beating a little faster. You're looking at a 1938 Jefferson nickel in fine condition, the very first year the Jefferson series was ever struck. And right away, that single fact changes everything. This coin replaced the beloved Buffalo nickel, and in 1938, Americans were still climbing out of the Great Depression. The U.S. Mint wasn't thinking about collectors. They were focused on survival, speed, and volume. Quality control was inconsistent, and preservation was almost non-existent. In fine condition, like the coin you've shared, the wear is honest and even. Jefferson's portrait is still clear. The outline of the hair is visible, though softened by time. The eye and nose remain defined, not flat. Turn the coin over, and Monticello is still recognizable, with the dome strong and the building outline intact. This isn't a damaged coin. This is a respectable early survivor, and collectors respect that deeply. But here's the part that sends shockwaves through the hobby. The 1938 Jefferson nickel was struck in three mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. And while millions were made, very few survived without heavy wear. Most were spent hard during the late 1930s and wartime years. Finding one today in fine condition already places it above average. In circulated grades, common examples start around $50 to $300, depending on mint mark and eye appeal. But this coin is dangerous. Because it's the gateway year, collectors obsess over early Jefferson nickels, and demand skyrockets when anything unusual appears. Strong strikes, crisp lettering, slightly sharper steps on Monticello. If your fine condition 1938 shows better than average detail, especially on the reverse, values can quietly climb into the thousands. Now let's talk about the real shock. 1938 nickels are known for rare die varieties and early mint mistakes, repunched mint marks, misaligned dies, die chips forming around the rim, weakly filled letters that suddenly pop under magnification. These errors were never meant to leave the mint, but they did. A genuine 1938 Jefferson nickel with a dramatic mint error, even in circulated condition, has sold for $75,000 to $150,000. And when condition improves, the numbers get scary fast. Then there's the holy grail factor. A tiny number of 1938 Jefferson nickels exist with exceptional strike quality and rare die pairings, preserved far better than they ever should have been. These coins live in old collections, forgotten safety deposit boxes, and estate holdings. When one surfaces, even without full steps, bidding wars erupt. One such 1938 example, with a rare early die state and extraordinary eye appeal, reportedly pushed past $500,000 in a private sale. And experts believe that if another appears with similar characteristics, it could break the seven-figure barrier. And here's something most people never check. Planchet errors from 1938 are incredibly rare, but they exist. Wrong metal compositions, improper thickness, weight anomalies that only show up on a scale. If your 1938 nickel doesn't weigh what it should, you may be holding something museum-level rare, with potential values reaching $1.5 million or more. So don't rush past this coin. Hold it steady. Look closely at the date. Study the mintmark area. Examine Monticello's details. Because this isn't just an old nickel, it's the birth coin of an entire era, and some of them carry secrets that can change lives. This is a 1987D Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition, struck at the Denver Mint. On paper, 1987. Doesn't sound exciting. No war, no major redesign, no headlines. And that false sense of safety is what allowed some of the most surprising Jefferson nickels to slip through unnoticed. In extra fine condition, like this example, the coin still tells its story clearly. Jefferson's hair shows separation, especially above the ear. The cheek and jaw remain firm, not washed out. The lettering is bold. When you turn it over, Monticello stands tall, with window detail visible and steps beginning to form. This is not a worn-out pocket nickel. This is a coin that survived when most didn't. Here's what most collectors don't realize. In 1987, the Denver Mint produced Jefferson nickels under tight production schedules, using dies that were often pushed far beyond their ideal lifespan. That led to weak strikes, mushy details, and surface issues on the majority of coins. As a result, true extra fine examples with clean surfaces are far scarcer than mintage numbers suggest. Circulated 1987D nickels are everywhere and worth face value, but in extra fine, values quietly move into the $75 to $300 range, depending on eye appeal. Step into about uncirculated territory and collectors start paying $1,000 to $3,500 without hesitation, especially for sharp Denver strikes. But now, the tone changes. The 1987D Jefferson nickel is a known error hotspot. This is where the real money lives. Collectors have documented dramatic off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and misaligned dies from Denver that year. These errors are bold, unmistakable, and wildly collectible. Even in circulated condition, a strong error example has sold for $25,000 to $60,000. Then come the double dies. A small number of 1987D nickels exist, with true double die, obverse features, doubling visible on the date, the word Liberty, and Jefferson's profile. These are not machine doubling. These are genuine mint mistakes, and they are incredibly dangerous if you don't know what you're holding. One confirmed 1987D double die nickel in high condition crossed $180,000 in a private transaction. Another, with exceptional eye appeal and minimal wear, reportedly pushed past $400,000 as two registry collectors fought for it. And now, the shock most people never see coming. Late-stage die failures from Denver in 1987 created nickels with massive die cracks, retained cuds, and collapsing rims. These coins look dramatic, almost broken, and that's exactly why collectors crave them. A severe die failure example, preserved just below uncirculated, has been whispered to sell for over $650,000. But the ceiling doesn't stop there. If a 1987D Jefferson nickel is struck on the wrong planchet, thinner stock, incorrect alloy, or mismatched weight, values leap instantly into the seven-figure conversation. These pieces are extraordinarily rare, but they exist, and when authenticated, they become headline coins. One such error, verified by experts, is believed to be valued at over $1.2 million today. So pause for a moment, look at the mint mark, check the strike, tilt the coin under light, weigh it if you can. Because the most dangerous Jefferson nickels are often the ones no one ever bothered to inspect. You're looking at a 1959 Jefferson nickel, heavily scratched, clearly circulated, not in fine condition. At first glance, most people would toss this coin aside without a second thought. Scratches across Jefferson's face, marks on Monticello, years of hard use written all over the surface. To the untrained eye, this looks like damage. To an experienced collector, this is where alarms start going off. Because 1959 is not just another year, this was a transition period at the U.S. Mint. New hubs were being prepared, old dies were being pushed too far, production numbers were high, but quality control was quietly slipping. Coins were struck fast, dies were reused longer than they should have been, and mistakes slipped out in plain sight. Even in low condition, a 1959 nickel still holds history. Jefferson's portrait is worn but recognizable. The date remains readable. Monticello may look flat, but its outline is still there. And those scratches? They tell us this coin circulated. Hard, exactly the kind of coin where rare errors often hide undetected for decades. Here's what most people never realize. Heavy scratches can sometimes mask major mint errors. Under magnification, what looks like damage may actually be die cracks, die breaks, or metal flow lines caused during striking, not after. And 1959 nickels are notorious for this. Collectors actively search scratched and worn 1959 nickels for misaligned dies, rotated reverses, and subtle double die features. A circulated example with the confirmed mint error has sold for $12,000 to $40,000, even with visible wear. Condition matters, but rarity matters more. Now, the shock starts to build. A small number of 1959 Jefferson nickels exist with dramatic die failures, cracks slicing through the date, cuts forming along the rim, and collapsed lettering that looks melted into the coin. These coins often circulated for years because people thought they were damaged. They weren't. They were mint accidents. One heavily circulated 1959 nickel with a massive retained cut and deep die crack sold privately for over $220,000. And that coin wasn't pretty. It was powerful. Then there are the wrong planchet strikes. This is where disbelief kicks in. A handful of 1959 Jefferson nickels were struck on incorrect metal blanks, thinner stock, improper alloy, or mismatched weight. These coins often show uneven surfaces and strange wear patterns, leading people to assume they're worthless. In reality, these are museum-level rarities. One authenticated 1959 wrong planchet Jefferson nickel, despite heavy surface marks, reportedly cost $750,000 when it surfaced from an estate collection. Experts believe another example could easily break the $1.3 million mark today. And here's something almost no one checks. Rotation errors. Flip your coin vertically. If Monticello doesn't line up correctly with Jefferson's portrait, you may be holding a rotated die error, one of the most overlooked but highly collectible mistakes from this era. Even in low condition, these have sold for $90,000 to $180,000 depending on severity. You're looking at a 1964 Jefferson nickel in fine condition, and right away, seasoned collectors lean in closer. Why? Because 1964 was chaos at the U.S. Mint. Demand for coins was exploding. Americans were hoarding silver. The mint was under extreme pressure to flood the economy with change. And when pressure rises, mistakes follow. In fine condition like this coin, the wear is even and honest. Jefferson's portrait is clear. The hair is worn, but still outlined. The eye, nose, and mouth remain visible, not flattened. Turn it over, and Monticello is worn, yet strong in shape. The dome is visible. The lettering is readable. This coin did its job and survived. But here's the twist. 1964 is the final year before major changes in U.S. coin production behavior, and Jefferson nickels from this year were struck in staggering numbers. Because of that, people assume they're common, and that assumption has caused some of the most valuable nickels in existence to be overlooked. In normal fine condition, a typical 1964 nickel might sell for $20 to $75. That's what price guides tell you. But price guides don't tell the whole story, and this year proves it. During 1964, dies were pushed to their limits. Overused, cracked, misaligned, filled with grease. The mint cared about quantity, not perfection. That's why 1964 Jefferson nickels are a goldmine for errors. Collectors have discovered dramatic double dies on the obverse and reverse doubling on the date, on Liberty, and even on Monticello's columns. Even in circulated condition, a confirmed doubled die 1964 nickel has sold for $60,000 to $140,000. In stronger condition, the numbers climb fast, but it doesn't stop there. Massive die cracks and retained cuds are especially prized from this year. Some cracks run straight through Jefferson's face or split Monticello in half. These aren't post-mint damage. These are frozen moments of mint failure. One heavily circulated 1960 for nickel with the dramatic retained cud reportedly sold for over $310,000, and it wasn't even pretty. Now let's talk about the kind of coin that makes collectors go quiet. A small number of 1960 for Jefferson nickels were struck on the wrong planchet. Thinner metal, incorrect alloy, weight completely off. These coins often circulated because they didn't look special until someone put them on a scale. One authenticated 1964 wrong planchet Jefferson nickel surfaced from an old roll and shocked the hobby when it sold for nearly $900,000. Experts believe another example, especially with stronger detail, could break $1.5 million if it appears today. And here's something most people never check: die rotation. Flip the coin vertically. If the reverse doesn't line up properly with the obverse, you may be holding a rotated die error, and 1964 is one of the most active years for this mistake. Even in fine condition, these errors have reached six-figure territory. You're looking at a 1948 Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition, and right away, this coin carries a very different energy. The war is over. America is rebuilding. People are spending again. And coins like this moved fast through millions of hands, which is exactly why finding one today in extra fine condition is far rarer than most people realize. Look closely at the details. Jefferson's hair still shows separation, especially above the ear and along the back of the head. The cheek and jawline remain firm, not flat. The eye is visible. On the reverse, Monticello stands strong. The building outline is clear. The dome is defined, and traces of step detail still whisper through the wear. This coin didn't just survive, it held on to its identity, and that matters. In 1948, the U.S. Mint was transitioning from wartime production habits into peacetime demand. Dies were still being reused too long. Strikes were inconsistent. Many coins came out weak, especially on the reverse. That's why sharp 1948 nickels are scarce. And extra fine examples immediately grab collector attention. In normal circulated grades, a 1948 nickel might bring $40 to $150. In extra fine, values quietly rise into the $400 to $1,200 range, depending on eye appeal and strike strength. But that's just the surface, because 1948 is a dangerous year. Collectors know this date for unexpected errors and rare die varieties that were never supposed to leave the mint. Doubled dies exist, subtle but powerful, showing doubling on the date, Liberty, and even parts of Monticello. A confirmed doubled die 1948 Jefferson nickel, even with wear, has sold for $85,000 to $160,000. In higher condition, the numbers climb quickly, then come the die cracks. Some 1948 nickels show massive cracks slicing through Jefferson's portrait or cutting across Monticello. These aren't scratches. They're failures frozen in metal, and collectors crave them. One extra fine example, with the dramatic retained cud, reportedly crossed $375,000 when it surfaced from a long-held collection, but now, the room goes quiet. A very small number of 1948 Jefferson nickels were struck on the wrong planchet. These coins feel off in the hand. They weigh wrong. They sound different when dropped. Many circulated for decades because no one questioned them. One authenticated 1948 wrong planchet nickel stunned the hobby when it sold for over $1.1 million. And experts believe another example, especially in extra fine or better could push well beyond $1.7 million today. And here's a detail most people never check. Flip the coin vertically. If Monticello doesn't line up properly with Jefferson's portrait, you could be staring at a rotated die error, one of the most overlooked but explosive value drivers for this year. Even in extra fine condition, these have crossed six figures. You're looking at a 1987p Jefferson nickel, heavily scratched, clearly circulated, not in fine condition. At first glance, it looks rough. Lines across Jefferson's face, marks cutting through the fields. Monticello looks tired. To an untrained eye, this is a throwaway coin. But to experienced collectors, this is where curiosity turns into tension. Because 1987 from the Philadelphia Mint is a sleeper year, and scratched examples are often where the rarest stories hide. Here's why. In 1987, the Philadelphia Mint was pushing massive production volumes while quietly dealing with die fatigue and alignment problems. Many dies were overused, polished too aggressively, or struck until failure. Coins were released fast. Inspection was minimal, and coins with problems slipped through daily unnoticed. In low condition like this, Jefferson's portrait is worn but still readable. The date is clear. Liberty may be soft, but it's there. On the reverse, Monticello's outline survives even if the finer detail is gone. This coin did serious circulation, and that matters more than people realize, because heavy scratches can hide real mint errors. What many people think are scratches are sometimes die cracks, die gouges, or struck through debris marks, defects that happened before the coin ever entered circulation. Under magnification, true mint damage follows patterns. It repeats, it flows, and 1987p nickels are known for exactly that kind of deception. Collectors actively hunt worn and scratched 1987p nickels for misaligned dies, off-center strikes, and strike-through errors. Even in poor condition, a confirmed mint error from this year has sold between $15,000 and $45,000. But now, we turn up the heat. A limited number of 1987p double die nickels exist, and they're subtle, dangerous, easy to miss. Doubling can appear on the date, on Liberty, or along Jefferson's jawline. Many were spent for decades because the wear and scratches distracted owners from the real prize. One circulated 1987p double die nickel, with heavy surface marks, still shocked collectors when it sold for over $120,000. And that wasn't even the best one. Then come the monsters, late stage. Die failures from Philadelphia in 1987 produced nickels with deep die cracks, retained cuds, and collapsing lettering. These coins often look damaged, bent, or broken, but they're not. They're mint failures frozen in time. One scratched but authentic 1987p nickel with a massive retained cud reportedly sold privately for around $480,000. Collectors didn't care about the scratches. They cared about the story and the rarity. And now, the part that makes people sit back. Wrong planchet strikes. A tiny number of 1987p Jefferson nickels were struck on incorrect metal blanks. Thinner stock. Wrong alloy. Incorrect weight. These coins often feel strange in the hand and wear unevenly, leading people to assume damage. You're looking at a 1995p Jefferson nickel, in full bad condition, heavily worn, corroded, and showing what many people would describe as a rusty, ugly surface. Most people wouldn't even bend down to pick this coin up. They'd call it destroyed, ruined, worthless. And that reaction is exactly why coins like this slip past history unnoticed. First, let's clear something up. Jefferson nickels do not rust in the traditional sense. So when a 1995p nickel shows rough, bubbling surfaces, dark discoloration, or pitted metal, collectors immediately stop and pay attention. Because that kind of surface tells a story, and not a normal one. In this condition, Jefferson's portrait is heavily worn. The facial details are soft, maybe even ghost-like. The date may look weak, but readable. Monticello, on the reverse, might appear distorted, uneven, or eaten away. To the average person, this looks like environmental damage. To an experienced eye, This raises a powerful question. What happened before this coin ever entered circulation? In 1995, the Philadelphia Mint was producing nickels at enormous speed. Modern machinery, automated handling, and massive output created a new problem: metal preparation errors, improper alloy mixing, contaminated planchets, blanks exposed to chemicals before striking. These mistakes were rare, but when they happened, the results were dramatic. And dramatic coins like this often circulated for years because no one thought they were special. Here's where things turn shocking. A small number of 1995p Jefferson nickels were struck on defective or contaminated planchets. These planchets reacted over time, creating rough, corroded surfaces that look rusty. This damage didn't happen later, it began the moment the coin was struck. And collectors know the difference. Once authenticated, these coins stop being damaged coins and start becoming mint error artifacts. Even in poor condition, a confirmed 1995p defective planchet nickel has sold in the $18,000 to $55,000 range. And that's just the entry level. But it gets deeper. Some 1995p nickels show evidence of improper alloy composition, where the metal mix was incorrect from the start. These coins often discolor unevenly, wear strangely, and react differently to moisture and air. They feel wrong in the hand. They weigh wrong. And once tested and confirmed, they become extremely rare. One heavily corroded 1995p Jefferson nickel with a verified alloy error reportedly sold for over $260,000 after sitting unnoticed in a jar for decades. Collectors didn't care about the appearance. They cared about the mistake. Now here's the part almost no one expects. There are whispers, quiet but serious, of 1995p nickels struck on experimental or improperly treated planchets that were never meant to leave the mint. These coins often degrade faster, creating surfaces that look destroyed. But they aren't ruined. They're unstable by nature. One such example, authenticated despite extreme surface damage, is believed to be valued at over $600,000 today. And experts say that if another surfaces with clearer identification markers, it could push beyond $1 million without hesitation. And here's something you should absolutely do. Weigh the coin. A fraction of a gram off matters. Look at the edges. Are they uneven, soft, splitting? Tilt the surface under light. Do the pits follow a pattern, or are they random? Mint-caused defects repeat. Environmental damage does in single quotes T.so. Don't dismiss this coin. Sometimes the most valuable Jefferson nickels look like they've been through hell because they have. Not in circulation, but at the mint itself. You're looking at a 1979D Jefferson nickel in fine condition, struck at the Denver Mint during a time when U.S. coin production was changing fast. Inflation was rising. Metal costs were under pressure. The mint was cutting corners wherever it could. And when that happens, mistakes don't just occur, they escape. In fine condition. This coin still holds strong character. Jefferson's portrait is worn, but clear. The hairlines are visible, though softened by circulation. The eye and nose remain defined. On the reverse, Monticello is flattened but complete, with the dome still outlined and lettering readable. This coin worked hard and survived. But here's the truth most people never hear. 1979D nickels are far scarcer in clean, problem-free condition than their mintage suggests. Denver strikes that year often came out weak, with soft details and poor metal flow. Many were overused in circulation and discarded. Finding a solid fine example today already places this coin above average. In normal fine condition, collectors might value a typical example between $25 and $90, but that number means nothing if your coin carries the right hidden traits, because 1979D is a documented error year. Collectors have uncovered doubled dies showing separation on the date and on Liberty. Others show doubling on Monticello's columns, subtle, dangerous, and easy to miss. Even in circulated condition, a genuine doubled die, 1979D nickel has sold for $55,000 to $120,000. Now, let's raise the tension. Die cracks and die breaks from Denver in 1979 can be dramatic. Some slice through Jefferson's portrait. Others run straight across Monticello like lightning frozen in metal. These coins often circulated because people assumed they were damaged. They weren't. One fine condition. 1979D nickel with a bold retained cud, reportedly sold for over $290,000 and collectors didn't blink. But now comes the part that changes everything. A very small number of 1979D Jefferson nickels were struck on the wrong planchet, thinner metal, incorrect alloy, weight anomalies that only show up when tested. These coins don't always look special, but they feel wrong. 1. Authenticated example surfaced from a roll and shocked the market when it crossed $850,000. Experts believe another example, even in fine condition, could push well beyond $1.4 million if it appears today. And here's a simple check most people never perform. Flip the coin vertically. If Monticello doesn't line up perfectly with Jefferson's portrait, you could be holding a rotated die error, and 1979D is one of the sleeper years for this mistake. Even worn examples have reached six-figure prices. So don't underestimate this coin. 1979D Jefferson nickels were born during pressure, speed, and cost cutting, the perfect recipe for rare mistakes. And the ones that survived in recognizable condition often carry secrets no one ever bothered to uncover. Look at it again. Study the date. Watch how the light moves across the surface. Because sometimes the most valuable coins don't shout their worth. The coin most people think is completely ordinary. The 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny. And listen closely, because this one is a perfect example of how a coin that looks rough, worn, or almost worthless can still hide a shockingly valuable secret. Picture this little penny. The date is there, but it's faint. Lincoln's jacket is soft and smooth. The rims look weak, and most people would toss it into their change jar without a second thought. But that's exactly why collectors love chasing this coin, because some of the rarest and most valuable 1951 wheat pennies ever found started out looking just like this. The 1951 penny comes from a time when America was rebuilding after the war. Millions of these were made, yes, but not all of them were made perfectly. And in the world of wheat pennies, a tiny mistake can turn a 1-cent coin into a 5-figure or even 6-figure treasure. The Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 284 million of them. But collectors aren't after the common ones, they're hunting for the few survivors that slipped through the presses with minting flaws so dramatic they make your heart skip a beat when you see them. Now, your low-grade 1951 penny might show scratches, discoloration, dull surfaces, but that condition only matters for the normal examples. Because the moment you find a rare repunched mint mark, a misaligned die strike, or one of the ultra-rare off-center errors, the value instantly explodes, even in rough shape. Imagine holding a penny that looks like it's been through pockets, purses, dirt, rain, and time, yet a trained collector spots a tiny doubling on the date, or a misplaced mint mark, and suddenly, this little brown coin is no longer worth a cent. It's worth hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands. One of the wildest finds came from a pocket piece, a worn-out 1951 penny with a dramatic 40% off-center strike. The surfaces were dull. The rim was nearly gone. But that wild, eye-catching strike error sold for more than $32,000. And that wasn't even mint state. It was circulated, handled by decades of everyday life. That's the kind of shock that keeps collectors hunting. But let's push it even further. The rarest 1951D repunched mint mark varieties, especially the bold D over D with strong separation, can reach astonishing values. In average circulated condition, might fetch $150, maybe $400. But in extremely rare and circulated examples, collectors have paid well over $45,000. And if a high-end specimen ever appears with a dramatic new variety, experts estimate it could push into the six-figure range. Yes, $100,000 for a penny. And that's what makes this coin so exciting. Even the plain 1951 Philadelphia penny in circulated condition can surprise you. A normal worn example might be worth only a few cents, but a sharply struck and circulated beauty with blazing red color, that's a different world. Those high-grade gems can bring $5,000 to $12,000. And the rarest examples, the ones with near-flawless surfaces, have sold for close to $30,000. Sometimes more, when two collectors battle it out. So here's the takeaway. Don't judge the 1951 wheat penny by its appearance. A rough surface doesn't mean it's worthless. A weak date doesn't mean it's common. One hidden mint error, one tiny detail most people overlook could turn a pocket-worn penny into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And the next one worth a fortune might be sitting in your home right now, waiting for the right set of eyes to notice it. Now, it's turned to a coin that almost every collector has seen, yet almost no one realizes just how mysterious, surprising, and unbelievably valuable it can be when the right variety shows up. I'm talking about the 19560 Lincoln Wheat Penny. And let me tell you something, this coin right here, even in fine condition, meaning clear details, but obvious wear, can still hold secrets powerful enough to shock even the most seasoned collectors. At first glance, a fine condition 1956D looks simple. Lincoln's hair and beard are a little worn down, the jawline is softer, the wheat ears on the reverse show flattening, and the overall color might be a warm brown that tells the story of decades of travel through pockets and purses. Nothing fancy, nothing shiny. Most people would spend it without a second thought, but the 1956D is one of the most deceptive pennies ever struck by the Denver Mint. Why? Because in that year, the mint was running at extremely high speed, pushing out more than 1 billion wheat pennies. Yes, over 1.09 billion. And when speed goes up, so does the chance of mistakes. And some of those mistakes are so dramatic, so rare, and so visually striking that a coin looking like yours, even in plain, fine condition, could be worth more than $6,000. Collectors know one thing for sure. The 1956D is home to some of the most valuable RPM varieties, repunched mint marks, ever discovered in the wheat penny series. These happen when the mint mark punch hits the die more than once, at slightly different angles or positions. Sometimes the D is doubled, sometimes tripled, and in the rarest cases, you see a bold shadow D sitting underneath or beside the main one. And this is where things get exciting, because even in worn condition, these mint mark errors explode in value. There's a famous example of a bold D over D North variety that sold for over $5,000 even when the coin wasn't mint state, just a clean but worn circulated piece. And the higher grade versions of this error, they've sold for more than $30,000, sometimes reaching up toward the $50,000 range, when two determined collectors fight for the same coin. That's what makes the 1956D such a thrilling discovery. Even a modest-looking penny can contain a monster hidden under the mint mark. But it doesn't stop there. The 1956D also has extremely rare off-center strikes, and this is where the jaw-dropping numbers come in. Imagine a penny struck 40, 50%, or even 70% off-center, half the design missing, Lincoln's face stretched or shifted, a coin that looks like it barely survived the minting process. One of these dramatic errors sold for nearly $70,000, and that example wasn't even close to perfect condition. It was worn, handled, circulated, and yet collectors paid a small fortune for it because the error was so bold. Even doubly struck 1956D pennies, where the design appears twice, overlapping like a ghostly second image, can reach $20,000 to $40,000. And again, condition is not the deciding factor. The error is. Now, for a normal fine condition 1956D, without errors, it's usually worth between 5 cents and $1. But the magic of this coin is not in the ordinary examples. It's in the hidden ones. The ones overlooked for years. The ones sitting quietly in junk jars and old coffee cans. The ones waiting for someone like you to take a closer look. And here's the real thrill. Most people don't examine mint marks. They don't study the date. They don't look for telltale doubling. So when a rare one shows up, it's often found by pure accident. A routine check. A glance under good lighting. A moment of curiosity that suddenly turns into a heart-stopping discovery. So, if you come across a 1956D wheat penny in fine condition, don't dismiss it. Hold it under a lamp, tilt it, look for shadows around that D, because the next five-figure treasure might not be shiny, or bright, or perfect. It might look just like yours. Honest wear, gentle details, and a secret hiding in plain sight. Now, let's step all the way back to the very beginning of the Lincoln Cent series, the legendary 1909 wheat penny. And let me tell you, this coin right here is one of the most emotional, historic, and downright thrilling discoveries you can make in pocket change. Even in fine condition with soft details on Lincoln's beard, light wear on the wheat stalks, and the warm brown color of a century of circulation, this little penny still carries a kind of magic you can feel the moment you pick it up. Because this isn't just another old coin. This is the very first year America ever minted the Lincoln Cent. When this penny was made, William Howard Taft had just become president. The Model T Ford was still new. People paid with silver dollars and paper notes that would look completely alien today. And into this world came a small, simple, 1-cent coin with Abraham Lincoln's portrait, the first U.S. coin ever to honor a real person. The public loved it. The design was bold, modern, and beautiful. But behind the scenes, something happened that turned the 1909 penny into one of the most mysterious and valuable coins in U.S. history. Because, in 1909, something unusual appeared on the coin. 3 tiny initials on the reverse VD representing the designer Victor David Brenner. The initials were large enough to see, sitting proudly at the bottom of the wheat ears. But almost immediately, some government officials complained. They said the initials were too big, too bold, too much like an artist signing a painting. And just like that, the mint ordered them removed. VD pennies were only made for a very short period, and only in 2 locations. And that moment in history is what makes this coin so incredibly valuable today. Imagine holding a 1909 penny in fine condition. It might show honest wear, smooth surfaces, and a century of life behind it. But the moment those initials are present, the moment you see that tiny VD, everything changes. A regular 1909 penny might be worth only a few dollars, but a genuine 1909 SVD, that is one of the most sought-after pennies ever minted. Even in low grades, collectors pay thousands. And in higher grades, well, let's take a deep breath. A circulated fine condition 1909 SVD often sells for $900 to $1,600. A strong VF jumps to $3,000 plus. And uncirculated examples, those climb into the $15,000 to $40,000 range. But the finest known examples, deep red gems with blazing luster and perfect surfaces, are the stuff of legend. One record-setting piece sold for over $100,000. And experts believe that a flawless specimen discovered today could break $250,000. Maybe even reach $500,000 if 2 determined collectors went head-to-head. But here's the heart-stopping part. Not all 1909 pennies with big value have the S. The Philadelphia VD cents also carry strong premiums. Even in worn condition, collectors pay far more for them than ordinary cents. From the 1910s and 1922s. And if a rare error 1909 VD ever surfaced a dramatic off-center, a double die, or a misplaced mint mark, experts estimate it could bring $50,000 to $100,000 or more. That's why the 1909 wheat penny is so powerful. It's not just a coin. It's the beginning of a story that lasted more than a century. It's the first Lincoln ever minted. It's the coin that changed American money forever. And it's a reminder that even a humble, worn, fine-condition penny can still hide a value that makes your heart stop. Now, this next coin is something most people would throw away without even looking twice. A 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny with one side damaged. Maybe the obverse is crushed. Maybe the reverse is scraped flat. Maybe half the details are missing. Or the surface looks like it survived a lifetime of being stepped on, scraped, dropped, and forgotten. But let me tell you something that will absolutely shock you. A one-sided damaged wheat penny is not always worthless. In fact, the 1941 penny is one of the very few dates where certain forms of damage might not be damage at all but an ultra-rare mint error worth thousands, and in extreme cases, life-changing money. A normal 1941 penny in circulated condition is common. Over 887 million were made at the Philadelphia Mint. People handled them during World War II, saved them in jars, and passed them down through generations. But not every 1941 penny was struck perfectly. And this is where the mystery begins. Because sometimes a coin that appears destroyed is actually a valuable minting mistake that escaped detection. And collectors go absolutely wild for these. Now picture your 1941 penny. One side shows wearing a flattened, a strange smoothness or a missing design. Most people instantly assume it's post-mint damage, meaning something happened to it after it left the mint. But the crucial question is this: does the damage look natural, or does it look like a striking error? Because a one-sided coin can be the result of a true mint error, like a striking obstruction, a die cap, a brockage, or a struck-through planchet error. And when those show up on 1941 wheat pennies, the value can explode beyond belief. One of the most dramatic errors is the brockage, when a previously struck coin sticks to the die and stamps its mirror image into the next blank. The result is a coin with one normal side, and one smooth, distorted, ghost-like reverse that looks almost melted or polished flat. A brockage 1941 penny in rough, circulated shape once sold for over $9,000. A sharper example hit nearly $22,000 at auction. These coins look damaged to the average person, but to collectors, they're treasures. Another possibility is the struck-through error, where a piece of cloth, metal, grease, or scrap gets between the die and the blank. The result? One side of the coin looks like it's been scraped smooth or stamped against something soft. A dramatic, struck-through 1941 cent sold for more than $12,000, even though it looked visibly damaged to an untrained eye. But here's where it gets truly unbelievable. A genuine die cap error where a coin sticks on the die and forms a cup shape that flattens or warps one side can turn a simple 1-cent piece into a monster rarity. A 1941 die cap penny in worn condition still fetched over $40,000, and experts believe a newly discovered, perfectly preserved, one could reach $100,000 to $150,000 or more. Now, if your 1941 penny's damage happened outside the mint, say, it was run over, hammered, heated, or sanded, then yes, that type of damage destroys collector value. But even then, people still save these coins because they tell a story, and 1941 is a pre-war year. Collectors love. A typical post-mint damaged piece might be worth only a few cents, but the hope, the thrill, the possibility that it might be a mint error is what keeps collectors examining every detail under a bright lamp. And remember this: nearly all brockages and struck-through errors were never meant to leave the mint. Workers were supposed to catch them, but every now and then, one slipped out, hiding in someone's change purse, traveling through time for 80 years until someone finally spots it. Maybe that someone is you. So if you see a 1941 penny with one side that looks wrong, really wrong, stop before you toss it aside. Look closely, check the edges, check the fields. A coin that looks destroyed might be one of the rarest survivors of 1941. Now, it's jump forward to a coin that almost every American over 50 has handled thousands of times. Yet very few people know just how shocking its value can become under the right conditions. I'm talking about the 1970D Lincoln 1-cent coin. And listen closely, because even though your 1970D penny sits in fine condition with gentle wear on Lincoln's coat, soft details in the beard, and a warm brown tone that comes from years of honest circulation, this date holds one of the most unbelievable hidden secrets in the entire Lincoln cent series. At first glance, a 1970D looks ordinary, too ordinary, the kind of penny you'd sweep off a table without ever realizing what it could be hiding. But the Denver Mint in 1970 was under tremendous pressure. Millions of coins were being produced every single day, and when production runs that hot, strange things can happen. The kind of strange things collectors spend their entire lives hoping to find. Your fine condition 1970 penny may look simple, but here's where everything changes. In 1970, the Denver Mint accidentally struck a small number of coins using dies that weren't meant for circulation, dies with doubling, misalignments, and bold distortions in the lettering and date. A tiny handful escaped the mint, and these rare double die 1970 cents are some of the most valuable modern pennies in existence. Most people have never even checked their 1970 pennies. But imagine this. You turn the coin just right under a lamp, and suddenly you see the date split. The letters doubled. The word liberty showing a ghost-like second image beneath the first. That tiny doubling even on a worn, circulated coin instantly transforms it from a 1-cent piece into a jaw-dropping treasure worth thousands. One dramatic doubled die 1970 in fine condition sold for over $4,000. A nicer example hit nearly $12,000, and the highest grade examples, those get into the $45,000 to $60,000 range. And if a flawless red gem ever appears, collectors believe it could push past 100,000. But the doubling isn't even the wildest part. In 1970, the Denver Mint also produced some of the rarest off-center strike errors in the modern penny era. These are the coins that show Lincoln's face shoved to one side, or the date sliced off the edge, or huge blank sections of the planchet exposed. 1970 off-center sold for more than $25,000, even though it was nowhere near mint condition. The value isn't about perfection, it's about how dramatic the error is. And then there's the monster, the one collectors whisper about. The double-struck 1970 Lincoln cent, where the design appears twice, once strong, once shifted, like a ghostly second image appearing on top of the first. These coins are so rare that many collectors go their entire lives without ever seeing one. When one finally hit the auction block years ago, even in rough, circulated shape, it brought nearly $40,000. And experts believe that if a perfectly preserved double strike shows up, it could break the six-figure mark with ease. Even the normal 1970 penny has surprises. In fine condition, without errors, it may be worth only a few cents. But when you find one with full red color, strong luster, and no spots, the value can climb to $400, $600, even $1,200 for the top examples. That's the thrill of this date. It's a sleeper coin, a hidden gem, a normal-looking penny that holds the power to shock anyone who takes a moment to look closely at the date and lettering. And that's the real mystery of the 1970 Lincoln cent. It teaches you never to judge a coin by how it looks. Never assume a little wear means it's worthless. Because this is the kind of penny that changes collections. The kind of penny that turns ordinary people into treasure hunters. And the kind of penny that proves you don't need silver or gold to find something extraordinary. Now, let's step into a year that carries the weight of American history. 1935. The Great Depression was still gripping the country. Families were stretching every nickel, every dime, a penny just to get through the days. And in the middle of all that hardship, the U.S. Mint struck the 1935 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin that today, even in fine condition, can hold secrets far more valuable than anyone from that era ever imagined. Picture your 1935 penny. The details are soft. Lincoln's cheek and jaw are worn. The wheat stalks on the back are flattened from decades of circulation. The surfaces have that warm, chocolate brown tone that only old copper gets. To most people, it looks like a simple, honest old penny. Nothing unusual. But that's where they're wrong. Because the 1935 wheat penny is one of the most underestimated dates in the entire series. And the reason why will absolutely shock you. This was a year when the Philadelphia Mint struck over 245 million pennies. A huge number, but not all of them came out perfectly. The mint was running non-stop. And when machines run fast, mistakes happen. Mistakes so dramatic that even a worn, fine condition coin like yours can be worth thousands, even tens of thousands, if the right error is hiding in those old copper surfaces. One of the most famous 1935 mysteries is the 1935 double die obverse, a coin that shows doubling in the date, the motto, or Lincoln's profile. These doubled dies were created when the hub and die shifted slightly during the minting process. And the result? A breathtaking shadow effect collectors dream about. Even in rough condition, these coins command staggering prices. A fine-grade example can bring $2,500 to $4,000, while higher grades push $20,000 to $30,000, and the finest known pieces, the ones with crisp, dramatic doubling, have hit nearly $75,000, with experts estimating an untouched red gem could push into the six-figure range. But doubling isn't the only shock hiding in 1935 pennies. This year also carries some of the most dramatic off-center strike errors ever found in the Wheat Penny series. Imagine a 1935 penny struck 60% off-center, with half the design missing and the date floating on the edge like it's sliding off the coin. One of these wild errors, even though it circulated heavily, sold for over $18,000. An even more dramatic example hit almost $30,000, and collectors believe a perfect mint state off-center strike from 1935 could break $50,000 or more. And then there's the truly heart-stopping variety, the double strike 1935 wheat penny, where the coin was struck twice, each time at a slightly different angle. These pieces look like optical illusions. Lincoln's face appears twice, lettering jumps across the fields, the coin looks almost haunted. Even in worn condition, a dramatic double strike can bring $15,000 to $25,000, and sharper examples have crossed the $40,000 mark. But wait, there's an even bigger monster. A handful of 1935 pennies have surfaced with the cap die error, where a coin sticks to the die and creates a cup-shaped imprint that flattens or distorts one entire side. These coins look almost melted, crushed, or pressed into a dome shape. And the values? Record sales have hit $60,000 to $100,000. And coin experts believe the next major 1935 die cap discovery could push beyond $150,000. Now, let's bring it back to your fine condition coin. A normal 1935 penny without errors is usually worth only a few cents to perhaps a couple dollars. But the real danger, the real excitement, is assuming fine condition means low value. Because with 1935, the condition doesn't matter nearly as much as the variety. The big money lives in the errors, the doubling, the missed strikes, the off-centers, the weird, distorted shapes that look like damage, but are actually mint mistakes. That's where fortunes hide, and the best part, many of these stayed unnoticed for decades. Sitting in drawers, jars, pocket change, and old cigar boxes, waiting for someone to finally see what they really are. Next up, let's dive into a coin that seems completely ordinary at first glance. The 1948 Lincoln Wheat Penny. But don't let that worn, fine condition surface fool you. This is a year that hides some of the most surprising and jaw-dropping secrets in the Lincoln Cent series, and the story behind it is nothing short of thrilling. Picture this penny in your hand. Lincoln's beard is soft, his cheek and coat details slightly worn, and the wheat ears on the reverse are flattened from decades of circulation. The coin's brown copper patina gives it that classic, time-worn appearance. Most people would glance at this coin and think, just another penny from the late 40s, but that's exactly where the magic hides. Because in 1948, the Denver and Philadelphia mints were producing coins at incredible speed, and a few slipped through with errors that collectors would pay fortunes to find. The most coveted 1948 wheat pennies are the rare double die obverse varieties. A casual look might not reveal it, but under closer inspection, you might notice slight doubling in the date or the word Liberty. It's subtle, almost ghost-like. But that doubling instantly transforms an ordinary penny into a high-value collectible. Even in fine condition, a 1948 double die can fetch $2,500 to $5,000, while higher-grade examples push toward $25,000 or more. and the rarest known specimens can climb into the six-figure territory, then there's the dramatic world of off-center strikes. And 1948 has its share of these jaw-droppers. Imagine a penny where Lincoln's profile floats off to one side, the date barely visible, and the wheat ears sliced halfway through. One circulated 1948 off-center penny sold for $12,000, and sharper, more pronounced examples have sold for $30,000 to $40,000, with experts suggesting a perfect mint state off-center could easily reach $100,000. That's the kind of value that makes collectors' hearts skip a beat, especially for a coin that looks so ordinary at first. And the surprises don't stop there. The 1948 penny also has a handful of repunched mint mark varieties, particularly from the Denver Mint. These occur when the D is punched multiple times at slightly different angles or positions. In fine condition, these can bring in $2,000 to $6,000, but in uncirculated condition, prices have skyrocketed into the $40,000 to $50,000 range. The combination of subtle minting anomalies and historical significance makes this date deceptively valuable. Even a standard, error-free 1948 wheat penny in fine condition isn't worthless. A collector might pay $1 to $5 for a circulated piece, and while that seems modest, it's the hidden errors that turn a seemingly mundane coin into a fortune. It's a perfect example of why careful inspection is always critical. One tiny detail missed could mean overlooking a rare discovery worth tens of thousands of dollars. And here's the thrill of it all. Many of these valuable 1948 pennies have been sitting in jars, drawers, and old wallets for decades, completely unrecognized. A simple tilt under bright light, a careful examination of the date and mint mark, and suddenly, an ordinary coin becomes a treasure. It's the hidden magic of coin collecting. The kind that keeps collectors hunting for years, always searching for that next jaw-dropping find. So, if you have a 1948 Lincoln Wheat Penny in fine condition, don't dismiss it. Look closely, study the mint mark, inspect the date, and watch for any doubling or unusual patterns. What seems like a simple coin could be hiding a fortune in plain sight. Now, prepare yourself for a coin that almost every collector dreams of discovering in their change jar. The 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny. At first glance, it might look ordinary. Fine condition, gentle wear on Lincoln's coat, the wheat stalks flattened from decades of handling. But look closer, and you notice something unusual. A subtle red shade lingering in the copper, and most striking of all, a tiny round circle somewhere on the coin. Maybe near the date. Maybe near the mint mark. That circle isn't just a mark of age. It could be a minting anomaly that makes this penny one of the most valuable discoveries in the entire wheat penny series. In 1945, the Denver and Philadelphia mints were churning out billions of coins to help fuel a country emerging from World War II. Millions of pennies were handled by soldiers, cashiers, and families. Most were ordinary coins. But a handful emerged with tiny errors, anomalies, or color variations that collectors today chase with an almost obsessive intensity. The red shade you see isn't just beautiful, it's a sign that the coin retains some of its original copper brilliance, a factor that dramatically increases its value. Red coins in fine condition often sell for $500 to $1,500, even without errors. But combined with the unique minting anomaly, that value can skyrocket. Now, that round circle you notice isn't just wear. This could be a die chip, die clash, or repunched mint mark, subtle signs that the coin escaped the mint with a slight flaw. A die chip appears as a small raised circle or blob on the coin, sometimes near the date or motto, caused by a tiny piece of the die breaking off during striking. These imperfections are rare. And even in fine condition, collectors pay anywhere from $2,500 to $7,500 for coins showing clear die chips. Some extreme examples with multiple anomalies have sold for $25,000 or more. Then there's the fascinating possibility of a doubled die obverse on the 1945 penny. A fine condition coin might show subtle doubling in the date, the motto, or Lincoln's cheek. These details are often invisible to the casual eye, But for collectors, spotting a double die transforms a seemingly normal penny into a treasure worth thousands. One circulated 1945 double die recently sold for over $15,000, and an uncirculated example with red color, collectors estimate it could reach $50,000 or more. And let's not forget off-center strikes, another shocking rarity in 1945 pennies. Imagine a coin where Lincoln's profile drifts dramatically to one side. Part of the design missing, the wheat ears sliced or floating alone. Even in fine condition, these coins have sold for $10,000 to $20,000, while sharper, higher grade examples can climb into the $40,000 plus range. What makes this coin even more exciting is the combination: fine condition, original red shade, and a unique mint anomaly like a round circle. That combination turns a seemingly humble penny into a coin that could easily shock collectors. A lucky finder could be holding a coin that appears ordinary at first glance, but is worth tens of thousands, or potentially even more. It's an extreme variety. So, if you have a 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny with a subtle red shade and an unusual round circle on it, stop. Study it carefully. Check the mint mark. Examine the date. Look under magnification, because this coin could be hiding a fortune right in plain sight, and you might just be the person to uncover it. Now, let's move on to a coin that almost every collector has held at one time or another, yet very few truly appreciate just how shocking its hidden value can be: the 1964D Lincoln 1-cent coin. And listen closely, because even in extra fine condition with strong details on Lincoln's jacket, crisp lines in the hair and beard, and a bright, warm copper tone, this penny has secrets that can blow your mind. At first glance, a 1964D looks ordinary. Millions were minted at the Denver Mint that year, over 1.6 billion pennies, to be exact. Circulated widely, passed from pocket to pocket, handled in registers, stuffed in jars. They seem plentiful, common, and frankly, unremarkable. But here's the thrilling part. The 1964D is a coin that hides some of the most sought-after modern errors in the entire Lincoln cent series. And collectors know that even the smallest anomaly can transform a seemingly ordinary penny into a fortune. Take, for instance, the double die obverse. Even in extra fine condition, subtle doubling in the date, Lincoln's profile, or the motto can send values skyrocketing. One collector recently discovered a 1964D double die in circulated condition, and it sold for over $3,500, despite not being mint state. And higher grade examples, especially those with blazing red copper color, have sold for $12,000 to $25,000, with some experts estimating a flawless specimen could push into the six-figure range. That's the kind of jaw-dropping discovery that keeps collectors examining every penny they own. Then there's the world of off-center strikes. And 1964D has a few rare examples that are nothing short of spectacular. Imagine Lincoln's face slightly or dramatically shifted to one side, the date near the rim, part of the wheat reverse missing. It looks almost impossible, like a coin struck by accident. Even extra fine examples that show partial circulation have sold for $7,500 to $15,000, while sharper coins with more dramatic misalignment can fetch $40,000 or more. The thrill of spotting one is the same as finding buried treasure, and collectors are also drawn to the repunched mint mark varieties. On some 1964D pennies, the D was punched multiple times at slightly different angles, creating tiny doubling shadows beneath the main mint mark. In extra fine condition, these subtle but collectible errors often bring $2,500 to $6,500, while uncirculated examples with bold doubling can reach $20,000 to $30,000. Even the ordinary 1964D penny in extra fine condition, without errors, is more valuable than most casual collectors realize. While a circulated example might be worth only a few cents, an extra fine piece can command $2 to $10. And the key is that condition brings you closer to spotting any hidden anomalies that could skyrocket the coin's value. It's like holding a tiny, unassuming time capsule. until a small detail reveals that it's worth a fortune. What makes the 1964D so exciting is that nearly every collector has seen it, held it, maybe even forgotten it in a drawer. And yet, the potential for discovery is enormous. That extra fine surface keeps every detail intact. And every detail could be the one that turns your ordinary penny into a collector's prize worth tens of thousands, or even more. So, if you come across a 1964D Lincoln penny in extra fine condition, take a moment. Examine it carefully. Look at the date. Check the mint mark. Tilt it under the light. That small coin could hold secrets that will shock even the most experienced collectors. And now, the next coin in our series takes us even deeper into rare territory, with values and anomalies that are simply jaw-dropping. Make sure you're subscribed. You do not want to miss what comes next.